Hello everyone, welcome to Friday's event. We're with the NSSG and this is Exciting the Next Generation. And my name's Priya and I hope you guys are all looking forward to today's event, which is going to answer some of your questions about the nuclear industry that perhaps you were too afraid to ask. And we've got 4 great panelists, so I hope you're looking forward to it. Before we start, we've got a short video, which we got some we got some participants to this video for us, and I have to say it's quite a good video. So look, I hope you guys look forward to it, and we can press play on that video.
So my name is Aaron. I'm an environmental engineer working with Magnox.
My name is Harvey. I am a nuclear graduate, sponsored by Sellafield Limited, and I'm currently seconded within the Department of Business, Energy and Industrial Strategy in their Advanced Nuclear Innovation team.
Hello, my name is Emily Newton and I am a nuclear engineer within the Ministry of Defence. I currently work as a strategy advisor within the Defence Nuclear Organisation.
Hi, I'm Annalise Bedard. I am a project management degree apprentice on behalf of the Nuclear Skills Strategy Group.
I quite like playing badminton when COVID times weren't around, and yeah, in general, just keeping active mind and body. So whatever I can do.
I'm quite an avid reader, probably going through 1 or 2 books a week. I have recently got into running, and I, especially in the pandemic, have gotten into video games.
Outside of work, before COVID, I used to love to travel. I really enjoy learning about other cultures and other countries. Now, obviously, that can't happen. So, like many people, I've really gotten into cooking and yoga and a little bit of photography.
Yeah, so a couple of years ago I actually picked up indoor climbing and bouldering. It's not been too easy at the moment though because of COVID. I also like outdoor open water swimming, some people call it. There's a lake quite close to me that I swim in. And I also like cars and motorbikes, but as I live at home, I've not been allowed a motorbike just yet, so I had to compromise and buy a fast car instead.
I think ultimately I want to make as big a difference as I can for the less privileged people. Make sure that we have an equal society and everybody has the same opportunities. In the UK and abroad.
Mainly to have a job that I actually enjoy doing, and just to have quite an enjoyable life, and for the most part.
One day I'd love to be a leader in nuclear on the international stage. I'd like to contribute to the advancement of society, not only with energy security, which is so important, and the green economy, but to use those technological advancements to further the human race on Earth and maybe someday in space.
Just to be able to define my own success would be a start. And then personally, I think I'd like to travel quite a bit.
Food. If I had a plate of chips, I don't think I'd want to share that.
I guess my toothbrush, it just doesn't strike me as a thing I'd want to do, really.
But I feel like a fairly generic one would be passwords. But I definitely would struggle to share chocolate. It is the best thing.
For me, specifically cheese. It'd be camembert and brie. No one touches my camembert and brie. I won't share that with anyone.
Thought we had this abundant energy source and did a master's in nuclear engineering and realised that fission already does a lot of what we want fusion to do. So yeah, and then I got into the nuclear graduate scheme and here I am a few years later.
I'd always had an interest in applied nuclear physics and in nuclear in general as a sort of energy system. And when I saw the nuclear graduate scheme come up, it felt like the perfect way to kind of explore the industry and see where I'd like to go into.
I actually wanted to join the Navy, but my mum was having none of it, and I saw an advert online for a really great school. It was called Welbeck Defence Sixth Form College.
I essentially fell into it really. I was doing dentistry at the time when I saw this position come up online, and I thought that's for me, so I may as well apply. If I don't get it, I don't get it, and if I do, then I know it's meant to be.
I think the people are actually pretty epic. The people are very special in nuclear. It's very rare that you meet somebody who's not very nice, or you can't talk to in the nuclear industry.
I think it's that there's so many different facets and areas of it. You can do basically anything within it: safety, engineering, lab work, whatever you name it. And there's so many different interesting areas and roles you can have.
I would say how small and specialised it is. It's a group of really intelligent people. It's a very small community, and I've met some honestly really lovely people that I would consider very close friends through it.
Probably for me, the dedication of the people who work in the industry and the individuals who drive for sector success.
This is the future clean technology. This is low volumes of waste, low land footprints.
For one thing, it's a very established industry. It's likely to be around for the next couple of decades to a century. No matter what happens, there's always going to be decommissioning going on. So it's a safe job if you want to be uninterested.
I think it's the right time at the moment. I think we're on the edge of it becoming the next big thing.
You can take so many different routes career-wise. I'm in project management, but there are so many other options. And the fact that they really value apprentices, there are so many apprenticeship opportunities that even if you didn't study it at a college or in an educational environment, you've got that opportunity to build your skills and get to that point where you can build a career in something other than what you studied.
Re-recognition of nuclear's potential.
I guess the development and rollout of advanced nuclear reactors, the next generation essentially, as these will hopefully completely revolutionise the industry and what it can be used for.
But I hope the industry will grow in the UK and globally. I think it's finally being seen as a way to combat climate change.
For me at the moment, a big focus is working towards some of our targets, our commitments that were outlined in the original nuclear sector deal. So for example, the 40% women in nuclear by 2030, I think that's a big one, quite big hitting. And also seeing where the Green Jobs Task Force piece takes us, that has a lot of value, and I think mapping that out over the next few years to see the progress will be excellent.
Everybody with that video. Thank you very much to Emily, Annalise. We've got Harvey, and we had Aaron, and they're all from different parts of the nuclear industry doing different things. And I hope to everybody listening in, that was quite insightful. It was short but sweet, I guess, and I thoroughly enjoyed the video, partly because I know a few of them, so that sometimes helps. But so now we're going on to sort of the main part of the session, which is our question time style format, where you guys who are listening in can ask our four panelists questions on the nuclear industry that perhaps you were perhaps too afraid to ask, have never asked, and can gain some insight from our young professionals. So we've got Carwyn, we've got Charlotte, we've got Usman, and we've got Heather, all from different parts of the industry as well, different locations geographically. And this is a time for you guys that are listening in to actually put in any questions that you may want to ask. And I've got my handy little device here, so I will be seeing the questions as they come in, and whichever ones are, for example, the most voted or quite popular, I'll ask them to our four panelists. But before we start, I think it would be good if we could get a little introduction from each of them. Find out a little bit about what they do, a brief introduction to how they got into the industry. And can we start with Carwyn?
Absolutely. Thanks, Priya. So morning, everyone. My name is Carwyn Chamberlain. I am a lead consultant at a small consultancy called DBD, who are a specialist nuclear consultancy. I'm based in Liverpool, but I work in Warrington, so town's about 20 miles away. My career so far, so at the age of 18, I was sort of finishing up with school, not really sure what I wanted to do. I knew I always had an interest in science. And an opportunity was shared with me, which was from the company I currently work for, DBD. They were looking to sponsor a student through university in whatever they wanted to do related to STEM. And then provide them with work opportunities. So I would spend 9 months in university. I went to Cardiff to study maths. And then in the 3 months between me finishing that year and starting the next year, I would work for DBD, start to learn the ropes, shadow some of the more senior engineers, learn how they went into different companies and help them. So that's how I sort of got started in the nuclear industry. And once I graduated in 2017, I was taken on full time by DBD. Started working as a modelling consultant. So I work with operational research and strategy models throughout the UK nuclear industry and abroad as well. And I've sort of progressed in my career now, so I'm taking on different roles within strategy teams and project management, and as a lead modeler as well. And I also have a role outside of my job at DBD with the YGN, which is the Young Generation Network, who are a branch of the Nuclear Institute. And essentially they represent the views and opportunities for young people in the nuclear industry. And so I work on their committee to sort of bring opportunities to our members to develop themselves and to spread the word about nuclear, which is why I'm here today. Is that enough of a summary, Bria?
Yeah, that's perfect. Thanks, Karen. I guess we can go on to Charlotte and then Heather next, and then Usman, if that's all right.
Lovely. Thank you very much, Priya. Good morning, everyone. My name's Charlotte. I am a Marine Engineer Officer in the Royal Navy, and I work on submarines. How I got there, quite like Annalise said in the video, I just kind of fell into things. I did a physics degree at the University of Bath, and I got towards the end of that and I had absolutely no idea what I wanted to do. I'd done a little bit of work with some defence contractors during my uni degree, and I kind of thought actually defence is maybe the world that I wanted to look into. I'd also kind of decided that I didn't really want to be a research physicist. I wanted to be more of an engineer. And not a lot of companies will take you as a physicist to be an engineer. So I sort of fell into working for the Ministry of Defence. I went through their graduate scheme and they were happy to take me as a physicist and sort of put me into the nuclear engineering pathway. So I worked with them for about 2.5 years. I did loads of really, really interesting work. I worked in the Government Office for Science, and I worked for the Strategic Weapons Programme. I worked for submarine acquisition. I did a whole range of things, which was really, really interesting. And then I decided actually I'd spent a lot of time working with submariners, and I thought I kind of want to sit on that side of the fence rather than the sort of the mod side of the fence. So I took the plunge and applied to join the Navy. Joined in 2018. And since then, I've been completing my training pipeline to become a submarine engineer. So you do 6 months of basic training as an officer, which is effectively ironing, running and press ups for 6 whole months. Once you go through that, you then actually do some sort of real engineering work. And that's what I'm just coming to the end of now. So I've got a couple more months left. And then I'll join a Vanguard class submarine in June this year and begin going to sea and doing the actual kind of engineering and operating the nuclear reactor on board. Yeah, so that's me.
Thanks, Charlotte. I guess Heather, you're next.
Yep, so my name's Heather Lovell and I'm an engineer in the product design group at Westinghouse Springfields Fuels Limited, which is based in Preston. So in this department, I'm part of the product and process materials team. So we're kind of mainly responsible for defining technical requirements for the materials and components used in the advanced gas-cooled reactor fuel, which we manufacture on site. So as part of this, the team is looking at ensuring the quality of products that are supplied by suppliers, and we actually have 18 suppliers who are based across the UK and Europe, and as well, so some activity I'll be involved with will be looking at assessing changes to the design, materials and the manufacturing route of all these components. So to get to my current role, I actually started as an apprentice at Westinghouse in August 2015. This was a higher engineering apprenticeship and it lasted 4 years. So I actually finished that in August 2019. And throughout this, I completed many placements in maintenance, but then mainly in engineering-based departments across the site. And then alongside this, I was able to do a HNC in mechanical engineering and then was sponsored with the company to go on to do a bachelor's degree in mechatronics engineering, which has all led to me where I am today and then starting a master's this year. So I'm part of this panel today because I'm a keen advocate for apprenticeships, as I think it's a really good route into the nuclear industry that I don't think when I was at college was really promoted that much. I do think it was mainly kind of degrees, and I think apprenticeships can run alongside that and are a really big factor and are massively promoted on our site. And also at last year's UK Nuclear Skills Awards, I won Apprentice of the Year in the overall UK Nuclear Apprentice of the Year. So kind of want to, from that, been asked to talk about my experiences and hopefully answer some of your questions. So look forward to hearing them.
Thanks, Heather. And I've just looked at some of the questions coming through, and yeah, we've got around 21. So and one for you as well, Heather. So that's looking good. I guess Usman, last but not least.
Thank you, Priya. Good morning, everybody. So my name is Usman Ahmed. I'm a Principal Electrical Control and Instrumentation Engineer working for Jacobs based in Glasgow. Been in industry for about 10 years now, so I know I'm a little bit older than the rest of the guys in the group. So after school, I went to Strathclyde University. I done a degree in electronic and electrical engineering. And I think it was at that time I really knew I wanted to be in the sort of power sector at the time. Didn't know what particular method of power, but I knew I wanted to be in that field, whether it was oil and gas or coal or renewables or nuclear, and really nuclear stuck out to me just purely because of the diversity of the work within the industry. So I applied to the nuclear graduate scheme, which I know a few of the guys have been on, and I was sponsored by Sellafield. So I worked at Sellafield, and then I moved down to Bristol. I worked on a project at Magnox, which was a decommissioning project at Barclay. Moved back up to Sellafield at the end of my scheme and then ended up staying there for about 3 years. After that, I decided it was time to get back home to Glasgow and applied back up north. Once I got back up, I then got sent back down south again, so I was working in London, working on a nuclear new build project at this time, so that was for Hinkley Point C. And then finally moved back, and I've been now working at Faz Lane, just on the west coast of Scotland, for the last 5 years on a number of different projects. So it just goes to show the sort of diversity. I've kind of worked through the full, what we call the nuclear life cycle, from sort of power generation to decommissioning, and now I've moved into the defence side of things up here back home. During that time, I managed to get chartered back in 2017. I've been quite active with the Institute of Engineering Technology. Wherever I've been, I've sort of been in the committees. I'm actually the IET coordinator now for Jacobs. So I'm always really keen on developing young engineers and getting them through to professional development. So yeah, that's really an introduction from me, Priya. Thanks.
Thanks, Usman, and thanks to all four of you. I know that we had a few questions that we thought would be good to ask you, but seeing as we've got so many questions from everyone listening in, I think it's probably best to go with them, seeing as that's what they're tuned in for. So I've got one first question, and this is probably, I guess, a good question for yourself, Usman and Charlotte, which is, how feasible is it to transfer from the defence side of the industry to the civil and vice versa? Yeah, Usman, or Charlotte, whichever.
Wait for Charlotte. Yeah, I'm happy to take that. So yeah, so my transition really, I started on the civil side of things. As I say, started at Sellafield from Magnox, Hinkley Point C, And then really to get into the defence sector, I think that it really is transferable. The technology that's been used, if you look at the defence side of things within the reactors or the actual generating stations, it's not dissimilar. It's just everything's still there, just on a smaller scale on the defence side, which makes it a little bit more complicated. But in terms of transferring, there was no real. I certainly didn't have any issues in transferring, and I think a lot of although we term it nuclear, a lot of the infrastructure, the sort of projects are quite similar in certain ways. Both sides have got what we call safety case. So we're always underpinned. We're always making sure we're working to safety cases. So there's a lot of similarities in there, a lot of differences, but I think there's more similarities than anything else.
Yeah, I agree completely with everything that Usman said then. And especially, I think it's something that the industry is very keen to work on at the moment. Some of the work that the NSSG is actually doing is looking at effectively a sort of nuclear passport to try and work out how we can facilitate those moves in a smoother way. Obviously, there's a lot of issues with kind of security clearance and defence and that sort of thing, which also does come up in the civil world. So it's just how we can smooth that out so that everyone's on the same playing field. Because like Usman said, it is very similar. It can be very similar. So it's silly, if someone's trained up at EDF, for example, not to then, if they then want to move into defence, not to use them. Better to use them than lose them. So I think people are aware of it, and hopefully it will get a lot easier in the future. So if you go in one way and decide actually you want to jump over the fence, try it. Better to try it than not.
So I guess the consensus is for this question, it is pretty transferable. It's not too difficult, and you guys have done it. So our next question is, and I guess this is for any of you to answer. Probably would be nice to hear from all of you. What do your peers, school friends, people you know, think about your chosen career? And I guess, Heather, do you want to start off with that?
Yeah, to be honest, there's not been any kind of funny comments about working in nuclear. I mean, from being at Springfields, I have had comments like, you're not going to turn yellow because it's like the Simpsons place. But no, I think they've all been really supportive. All my family kind of like just couldn't. I think they actually wanted and pushed me to, as soon as I found the apprenticeship, they're like, that would be great to work there. You've got kind of like a career that's just going to span and take you through to retirement, which I think nuclear does because you've got so much variety. So I think in regards to peers and family, everyone, they really like where I go. And I know like my younger sister's actually looking to go into nuclear, but more kind of the chemistry side. So I do think it's really great to work for, and it's good knowing that everyone kind of around me is really really supportive of it as well.
Yeah, I guess I'm in a similar situation, very, very supportive. I think one thing I've noticed is there's probably a lot of misunderstanding about what being in the nuclear industry actually is. Quite often, I do quite a lot of sports. Teammates will often ask, what do you do? Do you get nice and close to the reactor? And I'm based in Birchwood Park, which is a load of office buildings just off the M6. So it's not quite the same as that. But I think generally one thing I've found is people often are surprised by the mobility within the nuclear industry. That, as Usman sort of mentioned in his intro, the fact you can move around the country and also between different countries. The UK is seen as quite a leader in the nuclear industry. So I've had opportunities to travel over to the US and Canada, and it's I think that's one thing people are quite surprised by and find quite attractive about the nuclear industry.
For me, just quickly, I think being in defence is a little bit different, obviously, to being in civil, because there is some controversy, obviously, surrounding the kind of nuclear deterrence programme. But it's been nice for people just to be interested and for me to be able to answer their questions. Actually, when you say to someone, I work on submarines, they're like, that's actually quite cool. And it's not something that I think many people actually know very much about. I often get questions about, are there windows on board? Do you have Wi-Fi on board? And once people get into asking you questions, you can then, they then want to talk about nuclear and the kind of wider industry piece. So, my friends and my family are obviously very supportive, but it's nice to have the opportunity to educate as well. So yeah, it's a different one to the civil side, but I think it's just the same for the entire industry. It's just getting that education out there and, showing people that it's not scary. And like Heather said, we're not going to turn yellow when we go to work. We will make it home safe in the evening. So yeah.
Yeah, I think for me, it's absolutely agree with all them comments. After all the Homer Simpson jokes were out the way at the start of my career, I think everyone was just genuinely interested. Friends and family were quite supportive, and they were just quite interested in exactly what is it you do. But you can always reply and say it's need to know, can't tell you guys.
Thanks for that, guys. I think one of the questions I've actually come up, which links quite nicely to this, is what were your perceptions before you entered the nuclear industry? Was this an industry that you knew about before you entered? I know for me, it definitely wasn't. I can see, Heather, you're sort of nodding your head. What was it? What were your perceptions?
Yeah, I was going to say mine probably similar to you. I actually really didn't know a lot about the nuclear industry, and it was just kind of from I very much stumbled into the industry, and then it wasn't until I kind of obviously got into the company that I kind of realised kind of how kind of diverse and how much there is in the nuclear industry. And I definitely think it's something that it'd be great to start promoting more, like through I think, like it's been said before, it's kind of known. Well, if like me, it was like I knew about it. I knew there were nuclear reactors, but then I didn't know the scale and all the variety and the jobs and everything that you can do. So I didn't really have much perception of nuclear. But obviously, like from that, it's such an interesting industry to work in and go into, and so many opportunities to kind of grasp at for young people.
Yeah, I was just going to say, actually, that was exact half of one of the questions that have just popped up. But the second half of one of these questions was, how can we make nuclear more accessible to everyone? And I guess when you've got people, for example, Charlotte, you're working for the NSSG, Colin, you're working for the YGN, and I'm sure you two are doing other things, as you guys said, on the side. How can we make nuclear more accessible to people that may not be so familiar with it?
Yeah, it's a good question. One thing I've found when I sort of reached out in terms of STEM activities and things like that is that nuclear is known about by young people in the areas where nuclear is present. So in places around Cumbria and around the southwest near Hinckley and places like that. So I guess how do we make it more accessible? Well, teleworking, as it's called. Sorry, I've been working on an American project, so remote working. Being able to not have to be in the office is actually going to be a big part of that. The fact that as a company, DBD is only a small company, but we now have people working across the country, not just in our central office, means that you don't have to live near to a site to be able to contribute to the nuclear industry. So I think we're taking a step in the right direction. How do we make it more appealing is a different question. That's one that I don't have all the answers to. But I think the events like this, where we're just very honest about what we do in our job and what it involves, and we're not trying to sell nuclear to anyone, we're just telling you what we enjoy about it. So I think opportunities like this to sort of share our experiences are a good start, but there is work to do.
Yeah, I think Carwyn's absolutely right as well. I think going back to when I was doing STEM activities, when we were based around sort of hubs like Cumbria, for example, we were going into local schools, but the kids tended to have parents or family that were already in industry. So it kind of made the STEM job a little bit easier. But I think round about maybe the bigger cities or the main cities, there probably needs to be a bit more STEM activities. I can certainly remember when I was at school there wasn't so much, and that was in a big city. But I think in the local areas there's probably a bit more. So yeah, I think one way would be to sort of widen the network in terms of getting the sort of the advantages of nuclear out right across.
Thanks, guys. And I've got one question here, which might be for a few of you. So we've got a question. As a materials engineer who is looking at joining Rolls-Royce on their submarine work, please can you talk some more about some of the engineering projects you have worked on?
So I actually kind of work in the materials section on my site, and so I'll actually be going on to a materials degree. And I think especially with materials and the projects that you can work on, they're so open. So I think I've linked in with plant improvement projects, so working on the manufacturing line, so looking at I think one of them was looking at altering kind of cycle times, and this then reducing time machines are running for, and looking at then improving costs. And then others going in like looking at materials that we can use, like introducing new parts. And then it's really interesting because you're then looking at how you can test that, and getting the chance. We've got the National Nuclear Laboratory on site, so within the role it enabled me to go into their section and look at the different testing that they do on kind of like the pellets. We have links in with the supply chain, which is like massively material focused, as there's all the components and all the steels, and so any change to any route you have to assess it. It can be as simple as looking at what coolant you kind of wash a component in, could that actually have then an impact on this part? So I think there's just so many projects, and it's just kind of they just keep going. So like I know for me, kind of in my role, that I do find that kind of every week there's something new, and each task that I find that I get, it's like learning something new. Even if it's looking at a material aspect, it's something new that maybe I'm kind of like progressing and learning in, or the supply chain, or even kind of the plant side of it. So I think there is a lot of interesting projects.
Thanks, Heather. Does anybody else want to add to that?
I can't speak as an engineer because I'm a mathematician, but I think one of the things that was mentioned in the video at the start of this was the advanced reactors that are being researched and planned to come online hopefully soon. When you think of some of the challenges that they are going to present in terms of things like molten salt reactors, if we go down that route, the difference in materials that is going to need to be considered for those reactors is going to present brand new challenges to the industry, and I think that's potentially some really exciting opportunities that might come from that. So we got those, triso fuel. There's so many different types of reactor technologies that are coming out that could present those types of projects. But yeah, I said I'm not an engineer, so I'm not going to talk about too much about mine because not related to materials.
Yeah, just a brief sort of thing from my perspective. Obviously, on board the submarines, materials is a constant issue. You know, you're putting big hunks of metal in seawater, which is never a good idea. And then throwing in some sort of nuclear reactor into that mix as well. You know, we constantly are kind of pushing to improve the sort of materials that we use, or the sort of corrosion like resistance regimes we use and things. So it's a really kind of key part of our program, from right down from the sort of the day-to-day work all the way up to the kind of high level. And obviously with the new dreadnought submarines kind of coming online in the next sort of 5 to 10 years, it's a whole new kind of a new adventure, a new kind of material thing that we're looking at with them as well. So I think, you know, it's quite easy to separate the sort of the research work that is done, for example, in Rolls-Royce. It seems like a whole different world to the people at the waterfront actually doing the boats, but it's so important, the work that's being done there. It supports us in our everyday work, and it makes life so much easier when we've got the kind of support from the materials experts behind us. It makes our job so much easier. So I think it's a really interesting world to go into, and it has real kind of day-to-day impacts on the people that actually run the boats. So.
Thanks. Just seen a question which made me laugh a little bit. What amazing ambassadors for our sector. Can we bottle them all up? But also, two questions for you, Usman, actually. So we've got someone who says they're due to start a career in the nuclear sector in Glasgow this September. They've never been to Glasgow, and they're from the southwest of England. And their question is Glasgow a good place for young people? And as a young LGBT person, is the city a diverse and accepting place? So that's the first question. Yeah,
good question. I like how it's directed to me if he's asking if it's a good place for young people. Yeah, so it certainly was when I was once around going around the city centre on various nights out. But yeah, Glasgow's obviously home to me. I've been around the UK sort of working various secondments, different locations, but for me, I knew I wanted to settle back here. In terms of the area, in terms of LGBT, yeah, I mean, absolutely. I think it's an ideal location. It's one of the UK's largest cities. I think one thing I found about Glasgow, it's because we do have the mix between civil and defence. So on the west coast side, we've got the likes of the submarine bases where all the vessels are going to be located, and then we tend to kind of work on packages of work. So even if the facilities are down south, if I'm talking about like generating stations, we sort of work from the Glasgow office. We've got two, I would say, fairly local reactors in Hunterston and Torness. There's a lot of work that comes out of there as well. So it's certainly a good location for nuclear, and certainly in Scotland, I'd say it's probably the hub up here. But yeah, I couldn't recommend the area enough.
If I could just tag on to the back of that, you timed it really well as well, because there's COP26, which is happening in November in Glasgow. So one of the UN climate change conferences. So there's going to be a lot of world leaders descending on the city. So that's quite a cool opportunity that you've timed really well with the start of your career.
Definitely. I want to go. The second question, I think I'll leave that somewhat towards the end, because I think that question might be appropriate for all four of you, actually. There's another question, which is, I guess for yourself, Charlotte. How many women are there on a typical submarine, and how will you cope without your mobile phone?
Yeah, I get this question quite a lot, unsurprisingly. Women, not very many, especially as an engineer. So I'm currently in a class of 22, and there's me and one other girl. On board, it varies depending on what boat you're on. There tends to be more females in the sort of ratings side, as opposed to the officers, just because there's more of them on board. So not many. Hopefully they try and put you with at least kind of one or two other girls, so you're not the only one. Last year I went on board one of the submarines, which was a stag crew, and I just went on for 10 days for some training, and I was the only girl, and it was like an alien had landed. They just didn't know what to do. It was a shock, but you kind of get used to it. And I think, especially in our generation, no offense guys, but you guys are used to working and talking to women. Some of the older generations in the Navy, it's been all blokes. So they're a bit like, oh, a girl. And they're slowly, it's taking them a while to get used to it, but things are definitely changing. Obviously I did a physics degree, so I've kind of always been in the minority. I've always been one of the few girls, so I don't mind it as much. And also it's quite nice because boys just get on with it. Like if they have an argument, they just punch each other and move on, whereas girls can be quite bitchy, which when you're under the sea for 120 days is not ideal. So in a way I quite like the mix, but it kind of each to your own. And mobile phones, it's it's weird to start with, but you kind of get over it quite quickly. On board, we have kind of a whole entertainment system, so there's hundreds of movies and ebooks and TV programs and things for you to download when you're away. It's hard not talking. So my other half is a submariner as well, so he's been away in the past for kind of half a year effectively. He was actually away when lockdown 1 hit, so I was at home on my own and he was away, and it is bizarre, but after the first kind of couple of days you're like, okay, he's gone, and you just get on with it. And I think it's the same the other side, when you go away to sea on a submarine, you're always busy, there's always training to do, there's always work to do, and everyone else is in the same situation, so you actually have to talk to people. You can't just sit and play on your phone all the time, so it's nice. I think it builds the camaraderie, and yeah, you get used to it, and I don't think you miss it really in the end. It seems weird now, but yeah, I think it's all right.
And I guess, Charlotte, there's one additional question actually about submarines. Someone's asked, are there windows on a submarine?
I also get this question a lot. No, there are not windows. So it's completely enclosed metal tube. So we use sonar as our kind of eyes and ears of the submarine. So we generally are listening out for other things in the vicinity. So no, we have a couple of cameras sometimes that work, that you can maybe see some dolphins on if you're lucky when we're underwater, which is pretty cool. But no windows. So unfortunately, you can't go and watch all the exciting fish when you go around. But again, it's something that you just get used to. You get used to like recycled air and having no sunlight. So everyone comes out a little bit pasty when they get back from sea. But again, it's not that bad. It sounds horrible. It's all right.
Thank you. So I'm just going through the questions, and there's one which is there's some funny ones. How many press-ups can you do? One of the questions.
I hate press-ups.
So the question is, let me just get it back up. There we go. So there was a question on chartership advice or the chartership journey, and any advice that can be given on that front.
Yeah, I'm happy to take that one if you want, Priya. Yeah, in terms of chartership, so depending on what company you're going into, and I'm sure a lot of them are very similar in terms of the push to get chartered and the sort of support that's given. So I've got no doubt there'll be plenty of support. In terms of advice, depending on your sort of educational route, there's no one single route, if that makes sense. So if you've got a degree, great, you'll go into your role, you'll get some on-the-job experience, and you might be able to apply a little bit quicker. If you don't have the degree and you go through a straight route through apprenticeship, or you're a direct entry, there's always ways of getting professionally developed. What I would say is get in the zone for applying quite early. So getting organised in terms of getting in with your institute, identifying what institute you're most aligned with, registering as a member, staying up to date with that institute. For me, networking was huge. And then just making sure you're really taking advantages of the diverse opportunities. And the reason for that is so you can tick as many competencies as possible, because that's really at the end of the day when you come to apply for chartership, you need to make sure you've ticked all your UK spec competencies, and the only real way of doing that is making sure you're getting a good diverse workload. So yeah, that would be really my advice. But one thing would be is there's no rush on it. I think a lot of the times I get the question for grads coming out, and it's done my masters, when will I be able to apply? And it's like there's no hard and fast rule on that. I think it's more key that you're gaining them competencies and at the right level as well. So it's not a matter of just ticking that box and that's me ready. I think making sure that you've actually developed that knowledge, so when it comes to the time of applying, you can actually explain it properly. that you have achieved that competency. So yeah, that would be the advice for me. And another one would be get involved, get a mentor early on. I found that really helpful. Mentor could be anybody. It doesn't have to be IT accredited mentor, or for IT as an example, but anybody that's in the business, ideally if they've gone through professional registration themselves, that's even better. But if not, just somebody that can guide you through and set you some objectives, and making sure with your line manager that's understood, so he or she can identify the opportunities to make sure you're getting your competencies.
I'm not too sure actually if any of you three have got chartership. No, but you're still doing fine. I guess, Usman, you're the one with the chartership flag there. But I have to agree with you in terms of the mentor, to have someone there to guide you, support you, and perhaps give you advice about how to do things the best way possible, or give you contacts. Sometimes that's very useful, isn't it? Thanks. Sorry, I just muted myself. This question came up near the start. And the question is, if you had 3 wishes that the senior leaders of the nuclear industry could grant for you, what would they be? Now, I'm not too sure how I would even answer that. So,
yeah, can you repeat that? I didn't get the start of it.
Yeah, so the question is, if you had 3 wishes that the senior leaders of the nuclear industry could grant for you, what would they be? Time to think, right?
That is such a good question. Whoever asked that, well done. I think for me, it would be it's hard to phrase it, to sort of let the new generation guide the industry, even when they're young and inexperienced, would be one of them. I've done quite a lot of work as sort of a young professional, so this kind of forum, and it is really useful, but I find there's still a little bit of a divide between kind of this generation and the senior leaders. And because a lot of the work I do and that you guys do is so technical, it's a struggle sometimes to get your voice heard, because they say that you're not experienced enough. Whereas, we are the people that are going to be taking over the industry in, 10, 15 years. So I think I would wish for them to let us have our say now, even if they think we don't have the experience, because we are the future. It's definitely moving in that way, and there's definitely some really great opportunities. Priya and I both shadow the NSSG chairs, which is great, and that gets us in with the kind of senior leaders. But sometimes I feel that they're just kind of paying lip service to me and saying, well done, Charlotte, we'll bring you as a token young person. And I would like it to be a little bit more than that, because the industry will be ours. So let us kind of guide it into what we want from now, rather than in 10 years' time when it's almost too late.
Yeah, that I completely agree, Charlotte. And this was something I chatted about on another forum at the Waste Management Symposium over in the US recently. One thing the US DOE does with all their contracts is they put in basically preferences to have. So ex-veteran-owned companies, minority-owned companies. So one thing I talked about with them is the potential of introducing additional points on your tender for including a certain percentage of young people, so that you've got young people working on those big challenges. So that's one thing I think could be a real benefit, having that diversity of thinking between the different generations on major projects. Is something that potentially senior industry leaders in the UK could do. So that's one. As a team, we've come up with one. Anyone else got one?
I think for me, I'm trying to think how related this is now. This is more a personal opinion. I find one thing that holds us back in development of nuclear is potentially the nuclear waste issue. So for a long time, I think we're trying to come up with a permanent solution for nuclear waste, whether that's an underground facility. My wish would be, could we get that sorted as soon as, because I think once we've got that, it will probably open up more opportunity and potential for new nuclear. I find that a sticking point. So yeah, that would certainly be one for myself. I think having that could potentially allow for more investment in new nuclear and take that doubt away.
Thanks. And anything from anyone else? It was quite a difficult question, right? Pretty easily written, but quite difficult to answer.
I think maybe a third one could be, and it was touched on earlier, but if senior leaders could maybe start to push to get nuclear on the curriculum in schools, because I don't think it's particularly well covered in the Welsh curriculum when I was in school anyway. I think it was touched on. So if we could maybe start to, and not necessarily, as I said earlier, pushing it as this is the only solution, but just showing the positives and negatives associated with it could be a real benefit, so that people are coming into the industry with a better knowledge of what's actually involved.
And I think some of the things that are happening now, such as the shadow boards, where there's young people actually creating their own little forum on topics where, you know, you do have the execs, the CEOs, the top board members on as well. And the ideas that are coming up now with mentoring, but also reverse mentoring, which I would like to see really take place within the nuclear industry, in every industry, you know, not just nuclear. It's something that's seen as the way forward, really. So yeah, I guess we're learning as an industry, and we'll get there slowly. So my final question, which I would like all four of you to get involved, seeing as we're sort of coming near the end of the session, is where do you guys see yourself in 5 years' time, 10 years' time, and how are you going to get there?
I can go first on this one. So probably shorter term, 5 years. In regards to career, I definitely see myself staying in the nuclear industry. I have no intention kind of straying from that at the moment, because I'm really kind of enjoying my role and what I'm doing. But one of my kind of career goals is to actually work to become chartered. So I'm kind of very much at the start of that path. So as part of that, I am wanting to get my master's, which I'll be starting next year. But I think in regards to my own career aspirations, I'm probably not looking towards going more into the management side. I want to kind of stay on the technical side of engineering and work to become kind of a technical expert in my role. But I think it'll be really interesting, especially with where I work, is because the AGR reactors are coming to end of life, and my role is based on the AGR kind of the components. So it'll be kind of interesting to see how that develops as we're looking into kind of, especially on our site, looking at all the different fuel designs. Because I know at Springfields we've launched the Clean Energy Technology Park to try and kind of like enhance that and bring more people on. So it would just be really interesting. I aim to work as becoming a technical expert, but it'd just be interesting to see how kind of past that 5 years and end of life, how my role might kind of adapt and change.
And Heather, I know you started off doing lots of different secondments and trying out different things. Is that something you still want to continue, for example, perhaps not on the every 6 months or, you know, the frequency, but still try out different things in different places within nuclear?
I think it's because mine were all on my site, so I think it is really interesting getting the different aspects. So even though I'm in a set department now, I do think with the new things that we're bringing on, so there's like discussions about lead cool fast reactors. So because we're kind of the technical side of the fuel, we're kind of being drawn into some of these new projects. I think it gives me I get to learn in the role that I'm in, but hearing this new stuff about developing on site and launching new projects, it's still giving me that link in. But no, it'll be great if I'd love to go and see some more of the reactors as well one day. I've only visited Heysham up to now, so it'd be great to kind of go and do that and experience more that'll hope enhance my role and what I'm doing.
Thank you. Yeah, I guess Usman, Carwyn, Charlotte. Where do you see yourselves?
Happy to go next. It's a good question. I think one thing I've realised is you never stop learning and developing, even after 10 years. Obviously, I've got colleagues that have been in for 35 years that will still say the same thing. But for me personally, 5 years, I'd like to think I'm sort of leading and developing a team. Doing that already, but I'd like to think maybe at a bigger scale. Another personal goal of mine would be to get another qualification, so potentially going into like an MBA type qualification. I think I've been quite interested in that. My company's been really positive in putting us through sort of various training courses. I'm on a leadership course just now, so that's really good. So I'm excited to see where that can take me as well. But yeah, I mean, I think the conclusion is there's opportunities out there, and within the nuclear industry, it's endless, really. 5 years, it's not a long time, but a lot can change in that 5 years. So that's one thing I've realised. You can set a goal, but something else can come around, and you can find something that interests you even more. But certainly, we'll be staying within the nuclear industry. That's I know that for sure. But yeah, interested to see where that takes us.
And I guess in 5 years' time, you won't be young anymore, will you?
I just about made it to this panel, I think. But
I think me and Charlotte are on a standoff then to try and give ourselves more time. I think I completely agree with what has been said going off then, is that there's that flexibility in what you're going to do going forward. You never know what's going to come around the corner, what role might appear that you maybe not heard of before, because you're learning every day. I think for me, the way I set my targets in life is based around, I want to have a legacy of some kind, so that when I'm not here, that I've made a difference to something. And so in terms of my career within 5-10 years, I would like to be in the position of senior leadership so that I can sort of act on those wishes. If I have that as a wish, I feel like I should be pushing to try and get that myself. So that's how I will be sort of trying to progress my career, is to move towards those sort of roles.
Thanks, Carwyn. And I guess what you've got that I'm quite jealous about, is you've already done loads of travelling with your work. So I'm guessing hopefully with the pandemic, not so, all this and that, you can probably do a lot more of your travelling to the States and such.
Yeah, I've been really lucky in that regard. In being in a small company, I've got to do travelling for a lot of my projects, because obviously a smaller team, you're more involved, and so you get to go and meet the clients. And absolutely, that's something I would like to continue doing. I really enjoy traveling, learn about new cultures and things like that. So yeah, absolutely, that will be part of whatever I'm doing in the future.
I guess Charlotte, can finish off with you.
Thanks, Priya. I really hate military sayings, but there is one that kind of applies here, and a lot of the time we get told at work that no plan will survive first contact with the enemy. And I think it's really, really relevant to kind of career. I know people that are absolutely dead set, and they know exactly what they want to do for the next 10 years. They're going to get this job and this promotion and go here, here, and here. And it's great to have those aspirations, but it never, ever works. If you'd have asked me 5 years ago, will you be in the Navy being a submarine operator? I would have said no. That seems crazy. And I think that's something really important to think about is, like Carwyn said, there's always opportunities coming around. They might appear from somewhere that you've never even heard of. And I think that's something that I'm trying to kind of keep in the back of my head, sort of for my future plans, is who knows. It's a bit different in the Navy because my next sort of 3 to 4 years is kind of set in stone. So I will join my boat in the summer, and I will progress up through the sort of ranks on board to become the nuclear operator of the reactor. After that, who knows? I would really like to continue to kind of strengthen the ties between defence and civil. Defence can be quite stovepiped. We're in our own little safe world, and we kind of like to stay there, and we don't like to let anybody else in because of the security issues and things. And I think that's silly. I think we need to work together. So I'd love to keep building those networks and those relationships. And again, like Howard said, it would be nice to feel like you've made a difference somehow, even if it's just to one person, just to leave something behind that's really important. So I guess I don't really have a plan. Who knows what will happen, but I think that's quite exciting. And, like everyone said, the nuclear industry is changing so much that it's almost just kind of, let's see what happens and go with the flow kind of thing. I think as long as you're ambitious and you're interested, that's all you need to be. And stuff will come along and things always fall into place. So don't worry too much. That's what I'm trying not to do at the moment. So we shall see.
Thanks, Charlotte. I think that was actually really good advice at the end. Don't plan. But also you were saying, if you're interested and you're ambitious, you can go really wherever you want. It's just sometimes opportunities come at different times. You don't know when they're going to come. And you just have to take them, I guess, rather than sort of deliberating whether I should or shouldn't. Just go for it, see what happens, and just keep going. And perhaps we'll see Carwyn in senior exec. But I guess we're sort of coming towards the end, and I hope for everybody listening in, we've answered, I would say, a majority of the questions. And thank you guys, for really contributing, and I've enjoyed it. I've learnt a few things which I didn't know before, so that's always good. And I'm in the industry. And I would also like to say thanks to the guys who helped us with the video at the beginning. That was quite insightful as well. And all of this content, the video, it can be found online. So if anybody wants to rewatch it, they can do. And thanks everyone. That's been really, I hope for everyone listening, really helpful, insightful. And let's see what happens with the nuclear industry. Thanks everyone.